Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church weekly podcast. Conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for our weekly podcast. And we're already having fun here in our studio because I have my wife Stephanie with me. I shouldn't maybe actually introduce you as my wife. I was going to let you do that, but anyway, whatever. And we're looking forward to sharing a few things with you today. So I do have this lovely lady next to me, along with me, the better half of our relationship, Stephanie, and we're related, but only by marriage.
Yeah, that's right.
So it doesn't I'm not sure if it qualifies. We're related by a piece of paper and a covenant, but
our kids are related to us. That's a good thing.
that's true, yeah.
So.
And Stephanie loves doing stuff like this. So if you see Stephanie around, I would encourage you to just say, hey, you need to be on the podcast more often because it actually requires like threatening. It requires like arm twisting to get her to be here. Is that true?
Actually, he just tells me I'm doing this or I will lose my job. So that's why I'm here.
That's actually not what I said. You want to tell the real story? If you want to go there, we can tell the real story.
Go ahead.
We're talking about forgiveness anyhow.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's a
true.
marriage, we didn't have a marriage encounter weekend, but we can just do this now. So what happened was we had a cancellation this past weekend. Of course, Jeff and Shawnee Feldon couldn't be with us. And so I said, Stephanie, you can preach the message with me, to which she said, no. Isn't that what you said?
I need more notice.
Well, I thought like Friday, Saturday, that's 2 days. That's notice.
That's
So
not notice.
Notice is a relative term. So I said, okay, that's a little bit intense, so I won't require that. But I said, but you will be on the podcast with me on Wednesday. And Stephanie says,
I think I said, yeah. I don't remember what I said.
Okay, you said, what you said was, I'll quit my job.
I don't remember that. Maybe I'm just trying to block it from my memory.
Yeah, you
so.
did. That's what you said. So then I said, it's not a job requirement, it's a marriage requirement. So I can just leverage whatever I need to. Anyhow, so let's get down to business here a little bit. This past weekend, of course, as you know, if you've been around here at ECC, we had to cancel, or not cancel, I guess I would say postpone our marriage weekend with Jeff and Shanti Feldhan. And even this very day, or before the week is out for sure, till we gather together again this coming weekend, we will have clear dates on that. So we didn't feel like we could make the most of the opportunity and resource that they would give us by going ahead when there was just so much extra of cleaning snow, not just here at the church building, but all that you have at home as well. And so we thought we would make better use of the opportunity to be with them and postponing that and looking forward to that. But if you were here or listening in online this past weekend, I shared a message about forgiveness, looking at Jacob and Esau from the Old Testament, which I would define as an absolute impossible relationship. And I don't want to encourage you in that. I know that that was a very challenging and difficult message. And I just want you to know, as I said this past weekend, that as I'm challenging you, I'm also being challenged myself. And I shared some stories of the way God's brought some healing in some relationships. And I think the relationship is restored to the way it was, but my heart is as pure from any kind of bitterness and anger that we can so oftentimes continue. And leading into this podcast, I've thought of another relationship that I had, which I won't go into details about who or what that relationship was. But it was a relationship that I would have thought that I would have had some pretty significant hurt coming out of that. And part of that process, sometime I was sharing that with somebody else. And, God would have brought a level of healing and just kind of brought me through all of that. And it was interesting that I don't know if it was a year or 2 years later that I was in a conversation with the same person, and he brought up like what I had been through. And what was interesting about that was I actually couldn't remember. So, I mean, it was even like this person reminded, okay, you've been through this. And I thought, oh yeah, I guess I was. I completely forgot about that. So not only in that case did God bring a level of healing, but he also brought a level of resolution to the point of where it wasn't even like dominant in my thinking any longer as well.
Yeah, I think that's amazing how the Lord does that kind of thing. One way that it works with me is it's very difficult for me when somebody keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. It keeps hurting me and hurting me and hurting me. And sometimes I just have to ask the Lord to forgive for me because I know I can't do it on my own. And I do love that, how you said that you actually forgot what it was. Sometimes that has happened to me in the past, too, where something has really hurt me. And then I go back and think, I have no idea what that was anymore. Then you know it's the Lord doing that, and it's just amazing.
Yep. But also what you said there, and that was a situation where I thought of, but I couldn't, or I just didn't have time to address this past weekend. When people are in situations where it's not just a past hurt, but it's a current hurt. And that's just, that is just a significant challenge, just to continue to forgive. And I think what we need to be aware of is God is completely aware of what we're dealing with and the situation that we are in. So please know that God is a loving and gracious God. And when it's an issue for us if we refuse, like I refuse to cooperate with you, God, I refuse to step into this. But he recognizes that it's difficult, and he knows that we're weak and we're flesh, and he's going to help us along through all of that. So I just want to ultimately encourage you in this process this past weekend, challenging to consider, and probably a number of you may have left that service or even got off from being online thinking like, yeah, I'm just going to leave that one go. But I would encourage you just to keep it before the Lord, knowing that he'll provide every step of the way. So having said that, we are looking forward to this coming weekend, where the topic for this weekend is dating. So it's kind of an issue that we've not addressed. We have addressed it in the past, but we didn't address this issue before. And we've been married for 30 some odd years. How long was it?
You better remember. 35 years.
35.
Yes,
35. Okay, 35.
It's a long time.
What's the anniversary date?
December 29th.
I knew that. I was just kidding. December 29th. And so we'll just simply say, I've not been dating for a while, which is good to know. Are you dating?
Just you.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to know that. So we don't, in other words, we're so far out of touch with that one of the things I wanted to do was to address some biblical principles for dating. But before we even get into that, one of the things, if you know Stephanie, or if you get any chance to talk to her for any length of time, and you're married or you're dating or serious or engaged, one of the things that I can almost guarantee you that she will ask you at some point was, how have you met? How did you meet? So what are some of the most unusual stories that you've heard?
Well, I have two in mind that probably have not happened to most people. The one, a good friend of mine actually married her gynecologist, which, yeah. Man, if I saw my gynecologist out in public, I think I'd avoid him. You were talking about on Sunday about avoiding people in the grocery store. He'd be one I'd probably avoid because I'd be embarrassed.
For a little bit of a different reason. Yeah, for a little bit of a different reason.
And secondly, would actually be my parents. My mom was engaged, and she went to Ohio to visit her sister. And my dad at the time was actually there visiting his brother. So they were married. The sister and the brother were married. Or I should say my mom's sister was married to my dad's brother, to make that clear. And they just hit it off, just really enjoyed each other. And my mom realized that she needed to break it off with her fiance. So she did that. And then she ended up marrying my dad. So I felt bad for the other guy, but not too bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But.
Yeah, Stephanie's very compassionate, almost to a fault at some point. So only Stephanie would be feel bad for the guy that was engaged. And you understand what I'm saying. But quite a situation, because your dad was from Lebanon County, your mom was from Arkansas,
yep.
And your dad's brother and your mom's sister were married and living in Ohio, and your mom happened to be up from Arkansas, and your dad happened to be there from Pennsylvania, and look what happened.
Yeah, God had it all orchestrated, so it worked out. So 2 brothers married 2 sisters.
So is our story unusual?
We met through a mutual friend. I don't know if that's unusual.
That's not too unusual.
No, but I'm glad we got together.
Yeah, me too. I was actually going to say, hey, Stephanie, you could share our story, but that way, because we have 2 different kind of versions of that, which is generally happens, but I'm a little bit afraid of what you would say online.
I don't think you want to hear mine.
Now I'm off track. What was I going to say? I mean, we have extensive notes here, so we know exactly what we're doing. Stephanie loves that. She's obviously a bookkeeper, so she loves the detail, and I'm not a detailed person at all. So I'm perfectly fine with this amount of notes, where Stephanie's like, I need to know like 6 months in advance what we're going to do, and you need to spell it out.
Exactly.
So that's not going to happen.
So I sat down here, and he just said, we're talking about dating. I'm like, okay. I said, just don't ask me anything I don't know the answer to. So.
But I'm not sure what you don't know the answer to. Anyhow, so let's move on. This coming weekend, here at Ephrata Community Church. The topic that we're going to step into is dating. And I'm just simply telling you, so what I've been doing is searching the scripture for how husbands and wives came together. Like, what's the backstory? What's the engagement story? How did they meet? And how did they come to a place where they became husband and wife? And so what I was looking for is some biblical principles that can apply, because obviously 35 years ago before we got married, there was no online dating. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. Stephanie was away at Penn State University. We had met. I had some interest in her, but I couldn't really just kind of swing by Penn State and say, hey, I just happened to be in a neighborhood, because I wasn't. It would be a lie. So I did what was called strategic consumerism, meaning that I knew, well, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I knew her dad had a stand at the Market Basket in Elizabethtown. Stephanie worked for her dad. I knew she was home from Penn State, so I was hungry for chicken.
Do you want me to tell the rest of the
No,
story?
no.
Okay.
We'll move on from that. I'm just simply saying, I'll simply say that we're looking forward to looking at some biblical examples, and not only some biblical examples of how people met, but some examples from around the world. So we have partners in India. We have one couple that we work with that's a British man married to an Indian woman, and a couple people from Nepal. And it's interesting to consider not only the biblical traditions, but also some of the global and different cultural traditions about how husbands and wives find each other. And I'm just simply saying, there's one of those stories that I'm going to say this weekend from one of our current ministry partners, where married as husband and wife, they did not speak to one another for 2 weeks after they got married, because she thought, as the husband, he was supposed to speak first, and he thought the opposite. So that's a little strange. So you have this both kind of almost like a biblical, confusion maybe about how that works, and you have cultural, and how does culture play into the biblical principles? Anyhow, so while we'll have some fun telling some stories this coming weekend, we will also we'll leave this place with some biblical principles that will be helpful in dating. And so there's this guy behind the camera right now that might need some of that as well. So I won't embarrass him by mentioning his name, but okay. What do you want to say?
Oh, I'm just really excited for the weekend. Yeah.
And you're helping me preach this weekend, right?
Yeah. If he would give me notice, I would do that.
Okay,
but
so
I
the
said
answer is no.
I need like a few months' notice. He said that's not happening.
Yeah, I still think a couple of days isn't notice. I mean, it's
that
Wednesday.
is notice. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Hey, we'll look forward to seeing you this coming weekend. Of course, our services are Saturday night at 6 p.m., Sunday at 8:30 and 10:30, and all of that's live streamed as well. We'll look forward to seeing you then. God bless you. Have a great rest of your week.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening, and that you'll join us again next week. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us by visiting EphrataCommunityChurch.com.